Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Darwin Porter. Good morning, Darwin.
Good morning to you, ANITA.
How are you doing in New York?
I am ready and raring to go. I want to talk about what has just happened in August of this year, the worldwide celebrations going on the 40th anniversary of the death of Elvis Presley.
Okay.
As you know, he died in 1977 at the age of 42. And if you've recently mailed a letter, you'll find Elvis Presley on the stamp.
Oh, good.
And he and Michael Jackson are now, even in, after their death now, they're among the largest estates of dead celebrities in the world, taking in millions and millions of dollars. So Elvis lives on. And, of course, there are some of his most ardent fans who believe he's still alive, age 82, living in Buenos Aires. But that's a little doubtful. And, of course, Graceland is one of the most visited homes in America outside of the White House. But it's been a time this past August, which has just passed us, to begin to evaluate this phenomenon known as Elvis Presley. The legendary composer Leonard Bernstein said he was the greatest cultural force of the 20th century, and he now belongs to history. He changed music forever, and not only that, but like social norms, the way we dressed back in the 50s, haircuts. I remember he appeared in a pink shirt, pink pants, and pink socks, and a man who did that in 1954 was likely to get beaten up on the streets of Miami. But my high school made pink and black the school colors, and suddenly men in my high school were wearing pink shirts. It was, and the ducktail. A lot of men who had abandoned the crew cut and started wearing ducktails. Now, his movie career is certainly not over. Now, does that make any sense? Well, yes, it does. People are working now on a hologram casting Elvis and Marilyn Monroe in Bus Stop. Now, Bus Stop was a movie made with Marilyn Monroe and Don Murray in the 50s, and Elvis wanted to play the lovesick cowboy. He would have been terrific, but Colonel Parker talked him out of it and put him in one of those silly movies like Viva Las Vegas, and Elvis never really got to do the roles that he won't. But hologram, and I don't really understand the process very well, but the hologram may bring back a movie with Elvis and Marilyn Monroe. They always wanted to make a movie together, and I guess in the 21st century, they may have their chance.
Well, something that you know, because you lived in Miami, is I saw Elvis in the late 1950s at the Olympia Theater.
Oh, yes, my God, I saw you there. Oh, yeah, I followed him even when we used to drive for miles through Florida and even into Louisiana to see Elvis. And now what is unusual is that he keeps appealing to each new generation. When I was growing up, Bing Crosby was the biggest recording star of the world and selling an incredible number of records. And today, I find it a bit hard to find a Bing Crosby fan. The one thing that Bing said about Elvis, which I found was most uncharitable, he said Elvis Presley never contributed a damn thing to music. Well, that's not true, of course. He contributed vastly. Now, Little Richard and a lot of other African American entertainers accused him of being a mimic or even a thief of black music. And one of his first hit songs was "That's All Right," and it was written by an African-American musician named Arthur Crudup, who recorded it. And he said, "I'm making Elvis rich, but I was born poor. I live poor, and I'm going to die poor." So Elvis took a lot of the black music and recorded it, giving it his own personal style. And he shot to the top in the glory days of the Eisenhower 1950s. Remember the GI Bill, Suburbs, Baby Boomers, Television with Uncle Milty, the launch of the interstate highways, and lest we forget, the Big Mac.
Let me tell you something else while you're on this roll with Elvis. We have a tribute artist who advertises with us, and I have seen him. He's the only artist that they at Graceland has allowed him to be the person that celebrates. His name's Chris McDonald, and he is so good. I think he's better than Elvis. He is so good.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing.
He's fantastic, and he does shows here but all over the country, and he's just an amazing guy. So he's told us a lot of the story about Elvis, and everything you're saying is exactly right, that he did take music from all different places, and combine them. And if
including
it weren't...
gospel.
Yeah.
Including gospel songs.
Exactly. And if it weren't for, the fact that he got on television and that they wouldn't show him from the waist down, then, that probably... I know you're going to talk about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know. That was Ed Sullivan did that, and of course he later admitted that was a mistake. But it was the era. I remember in high school there were two groups. There were those who played squeaky clean Pat Boone records, and those who played Elvis Presley. So there were two warring camps even back then. And in fact, one critic went to see Elvis in that performance that you're talking about in Miami, and I think it was the Miami News. Thank God it wasn't the Miami Herald that I worked for. He wrote, and isn't it funny you brought that theater up? He said it was the filthiest form of entertainment I've ever witnessed.
All I can tell you is that I was pretty young. I guess I was not even 20, but and there were lines at that time around the building. And inside, we all screamed that I didn't remember screaming that I had a sore throat.
Well, Elvis said after that show, he said, "What was all that hollering about? I don't know why they're hollering." And, of course, it was not only his voice, but those gyrating hips and hooded eyes.
Right.
And he became Elvis the Pelvis. He hated that name, by the way.
Oh, my goodness, I forgot that. Oh, goodness.
Yeah. But his appeal originally were with mainly girls, teenagers. But then it branched out to a very different segment of the population that's sort of relevant today. He began to attack a kind of white working-class Americans. Donald Trump appealed to that same type of voter in the 20s. They were often called the forgotten Americans. And one Southern writer called him, he said he appealed to the kind of white man who danced late at night in tawdry honky-tonks but who showed up Sunday morning for church.
Well, the other thing too, Darwin, as you're talking about this, is that he was one of the few people who actually went into the service. I mean, that was dangerous, and he did that. So you have to take your hat off to him.
Yes, but that is true, and I'll bring that up. But first, I wanted to say among his imitators was Bill Clinton, who adopted the ducktail haircut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he and his mother were the most devoted of Elvis fans, and Bill wanted to practice the guitar and become a singer himself, but Bill Clinton found another job. And now you mentioned he when he went to Germany, he was at the very pinnacle of his career, and in many ways I was sorry to see it interrupted, and Germany certainly changed his life. He fell in love with a 14-year-old girl, which I think is illegal. And then eventually they got married when she got a little older. And they had a daughter, as you know. Lisa Marie is born in 1968. And the marriage lasted 6 years. Now I will let you in on a dark secret. Elvis admitted that he loathed making love to a woman who had been born a child. And he admitted to the Memphis Mafia, his friends, that Priscilla became a complete turnoff to me. But he loved his daughter. And, of course, Priscilla went on and had other affairs. But then Elvis began to gravitate to a lot of other women. They were often completely anonymous, but I'll just throw out a few names. Anne Margaret, Natalie Wood, Rita Moreno. Dancer Juliet Prowse. She took up with Elvis after she turned down Frank Sinatra's proposal of marriage. Elvis even introduced Nancy Sinatra, which didn't please Daddy at all. And there, Barbara Streisand, Connie Stevens, Tuesday Well. Now, an oddity was the tobacco heiress, Doris Duke, who was the richest woman in the world at the time. And Elvis himself estimated by the time he went into the army that you just referred to, he had seduced 1,000 women.
Really?
Yes.
Do you believe that?
Of course I do. Colonel Tom Parker said that he would select 100 of the most beautiful girls, all of whom wanted to go to bed with Elvis, and they would go backstage and line up at his dressing room door.
Oh,
and
my
then
heavens.
Elvis would make his pick. Well, when you're Elvis Presley, you can do that, you know. The sad thing, I think, about Elvis, even though he is such a legend, is he did begin this long, long decline. He gained weight. Peanut butter and banana sandwiches fried in bacon fat, his favorite food, is not a cure for losing weight. And he retreated, as you know, into a world of uppers and downers. But he still amazingly pulled himself together. In fact, on the day of his death, he was actually planning a tour of 50 American cities. And I remember on the night that he died, CBS decided to lead off with a political story and make Elvis the second item. Never in the history of television did viewers across the country switch immediately to NBC, which led off with the death of Elvis Presley. I think the news editor of CBS was later fired.
Before we continue, I want everyone to know, because I always say, I guess it start with you so quickly. This wonderful, wonderful celebrity, entertainer, writer, and all the good things you'd want to know about him is named Darwin Porter. He has written probably 30 books by now, but he's quite an amazing man. And I know for those of you who've been listening for many years, but I want to tell you how you can get on his website. It's called Blood Moon Productions. Blood Moon Productions. Go on it, and you'll see just all that he has done. I don't even know how he does this. I don't think he sleeps or eats or anything, but he's charming and so smart. Okay, you can continue, but I just had to do that.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Back to Elvis. So this whole swaying, did it start a revolution in other people dancing like that?
Yes, it did. It really did lead to rock and roll, and we all dance for, and it still has changed over the years, but of course it's still going strong, and he really became the king of rock and roll, which redefined American music. Jackie Gleason, who used to broadcast out of Miami Beach, called him a guitar-playing Marlon Brando. And his idol was James Dean. Elvis said he saw Rebel Without a Cause 44 times. And then came the draft, and but before that, I think in the 50s was Elvis's greatest period. I don't think he went on and on, but he didn't capture that special magic that he had in the 50s. Some historians now credit him with inventing the oncoming cultural and sexual revolution of the 1960s. And what was interesting, a lot of rock was dirty rock, but he often sang really spiritual songs, and as we said, gospel songs. One critic compared him to Jesus Christ, which was a bit of a stretch. But also, his life was a tragic, one of the American tragedies. He had this talent of epic proportions, but it was cut short by his extravagant indulgences and his gross appetite. But his story is not over in the sense that it seems that new fans are being born all the time, and there's those record sales. I mean, really, the Lucky Estate, they're making far more money than he did in his lifetime. In fact, when he died, he was rather poor. It was the same thing with Marilyn. She died with $23,000 in the bank, and now her estate, a woman she didn't even know, is now pulling in millions. She and Elvis remain among the top grossing dead celebrities. Imagine making all that money after you're dead. But
tell us about his daughter. Is she getting any of that money?
Well, she's. I think she made a mistake and signed over many of the rights. I don't think she knew what was coming. That often happens. She more or less began to relinquish control, and she does not directly now get those millions, and neither does Priscilla. I would have many arguments with my friends about Elvis. I had a dear friend, you may remember her, the actress Joan Blondell. You've heard of her,
of course. Oh, yes, and you've spoken about her many times.
Yeah, she was a dear friend. But she said something that really upset me. She said Elvis Presley ended up looking on the outside like he was on the inside, an overrated slob. We had I love Joan, but we had many arguments about that. I told her I thought Elvis was the greatest thing since the invention of the washing machine.
Well, he certainly, he still turns me on. When I go to see Chris McDonald do the tribute, yes. Those songs, what he did, and he loved him in many ways, and he, I guess, didn't know him, but he certainly is impressive in how he reflects the beauty of Elvis. In fact, after the show, he gives out leis to people. He gives out flowers, scarves. I like Elvis. I'm sorry. Not everyone does, I know, but when his music goes on, Blue Suede Shoes and all those great songs and the way he sings, I love it.
Well, I'm still amazed, although I'm not really amazed at the continuing popularity of him. I mean, Elvis hated the Beatles, but he was most gracious to them when they came to visit him in Bel Air. And John Lennon gave Elvis, I think, the greatest compliment he ever got. He said, "Before Elvis, there was nothing."
That's amazing. Well, I also saw Elvis with Frank Sinatra. They did a duo.
Yes, I remember that. Frank Sinatra was not a great fan of Elvis. I wonder why. Not just because of Nancy, the daughter. I personally view Elvis as a forerunner of reality TV. I mean, he was before Princess Diana, before Michael Jackson, before Kim Kardashian, and get this, before Donald Trump.
Oh, please. You don't want to put those two in the same category.
Well, we're talking reality TV.
No, I understand that, but I didn't see him as reality TV. I mean, he had to certainly totally plan what he was doing. When he went out to Las Vegas and all over the world, it was a big deal for him to take it because he had, by then, an orchestra, didn't he? A group? And
yes. Oh, yeah, it had been perfected. But I'll give you, I think in a minute or two we have left, I'll give you what happened when he first arrived in Las Vegas. He was a total flop. The Las Vegas audiences were more mature than young people at his concerts, and he wasn't going over. And he met with Liberace, and Liberace said, "Take off all your clothes." I guess Elvis thought that was a sexual come-on, and it may have been, but Elvis said, "You've got to dress differently." And Liberace came up with that. Come out wearing a gold suit covered with rhinestones.
Really?
And then, it was, and you've seen it a million times, Elvis's dress changed radically. It became outrageous. And
yeah, that's right.
He owed Liberace for that.
And then, you mean when he did that, it was sold out performances?
Yeah, the costume really helped sell him to Las Vegas. And so the flop show became a hit show, and then from then on, and I've seen many of them, Elvis played till the end of his days in Las Vegas, but he always thanked Liberace for his wardrobe assistant.
See, that's an interesting fact. Only you, Darwin Porter, would know that.
Oh, I love those people, and I just had the greatest fun in the world going to attend Elvis. I was sorry at the end to see him, but I attended virtually everything, not just Vegas, but New York, California, just every place. So I was a great fan, and you know what? I still am.
Yeah, and I still am. And I tell you, this Chris McDonald wears the black leather. He wears the That
was in 1968. That was viewed as his comeback performance, and it was one of them. In fact, I saw it again the other night. It was brilliantly done, and it was, he went into a little hibernation after the Army, but this was a big comeback, and it was seen by millions of people all over the world. And I think it's time for me to go. Anita.
This was a great show. I loved your talking about it because at least I knew something about this.
Yes, you did.
Maybe we were both there together that night.
I think we sat together.
You're so bad.
Well, you look as good as that.
Oh, you're so great. I love you guys. Thank you so much.